Okay, I'm Maureen Corrigan, and I have the pleasure today of talking with Walter Mosley for the National Book Festival. The theme this year is American Ingenuity, and really I can't think of a better person to represent American ingenuity. Walter Mosley has written over 50 books, and we want to talk about a bunch of them today. So, Walter, you and I both have the distinction of having been present at the very first National Book Festival. And it's just possible that I may have interviewed you there. I know I had the pleasure of interviewing you years ago, either at the festival or at the Old Chapters bookstore in DC, but we've talked before, and it's really lovely to be able to talk to you again. I want to start by asking about your life right now. I know that you're a big proponent of writing every day, of writing for 3 hours in the morning every day. Are you still able to do that with the pandemic, or are you, like a lot of people I know, myself included, feeling like we're kind of a little foggy these days and we're not able to really stick to our routines?
I write every day, and I have been. I can, and since the pandemic, there's been one day, and that was a few days ago, that I didn't write, and I'm not even sure why. But no, I try to write every day, 3 hours a day. I can be foggy the other 21, and I am, and I have been. It's been a while to, like, for instance, start exercising again, and eating the way I should be, and all that stuff. But the writing I've been able to do. I've been doing it for way over 30 years now. So.
Mm. You live in New York. I don't know if you're there now or not, but New York is my hometown too. Yeah, you're in LA now.
I'm in LA.
Okay.
And I'm here. I was in a writer's room for this television show called Snowfall. And, but toward the end of the writer's room, not at the end, the pandemic, started, and sheltering in place became, the thing. And New York was doing so bad right then that I just decided, well, I'll stay out here. There's a lot of work to do out here, and, people to talk to, and every once in a while to see. So I'm in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica.
Which unfortunately isn't doing so well now either. Yeah.
Say what?
I said, unfortunately, LA isn't doing so well now either. Are you mostly staying inside?
It's having a rise and stuff. I don't think it's as quite as overwhelming as New York was at its worst. But and also LA. There's so much space in LA. It's really hard to tell if anything's happening. It's like it's not like you're going to hear sirens going up and down the street through Brooklyn or Queens or whatever.
Right.
But
it's such a strange time. I think for a lot of us who read and write a lot, it's not that much of a disruption in our normal day, but it's more the surrounding atmosphere.
There's a like a world spirit going on, which is not necessarily in good shape. But the writing is, for me, the writing is the writing. And I have some friends who are like painters, musicians, who are really doing a lot of work, in a way, just to be able to be at home and to to write or to paint or to play. It's been really good for them. It's a moment of, like, self-discovery, a potential self-discovery. There's all these terrible things about it, certainly, but actually, I don't even think you can avoid self-discovery in this.
You do have to sit with yourself a lot these days.
And do or not do things.
Yeah. In preparation for talking with you again after 20 years, I went back and looked at a lot of what I have read and a lot of what I haven't read of what you've written. And your range is incredible. Of course, the detective novels, political memoir, kind of writing meditation, books on writing, Afrofuturist novels, erotica. You really do contain multitudes. When I say, though, to people the name Walter Mosley, and when I've told a few people, I'm going to be talking to Walter Mosley, immediately the name that comes up is Easy Rawlins and the Easy Rawlins mysteries. So I want to talk a little bit about Easy Rawlins. You began that series in 1990. You've written, 14 Easy Rawlins books?
Yeah, I think it's
And
14. I mean, and then there's another
yeah,
coming out, Blood
okay.
Grove, that's coming out in January or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Great. And so you started that series, Easy's, in post-World War II LA, and then you brought it up
Yeah.
to 1968 with the last novel. Um, what attracted you way back when to the detective fiction form?
Well, it's an interesting thing about writing and being a writer. What I had done is I'd written a book called Gone Fishing. Gone
Mm,
Fishing is about occurs in 1939. It's a young, late teen Easy Rawlins, young late teen Raymond Mouse Alexander,
mm,
and they go on an adventure to this kind of mythical swamp town called Pariah, which is between Texas and Louisiana, and they go to get this dowry that for the wedding that Mouse is gonna have.
mm.
And it's a book about two young black men coming of age. One, who's kind of a romantic, and the other who's a psychopath, and
Yeah.
they're coming. They're trying to find themselves. What happens, is that what did happen. I wrote the book. I was very happy with the book, and I went to a lot of publishers through my agent. And oh no, actually, I went to a lot of agents, and they went to publishers, and everybody said, "Well, this is a really good book. It's really well written. We really like what it says, but it's about two young black men. There are no white
Mm,
people except one crazy white lady in the book, and the black women, though they're there, they're not central characters. And there's a simple truth. At that time, anyway, I think 88, maybe almost
mm,
89. White people don't read about black people. Black women don't like black men, and black men don't read. So who are we going to sell this book to?
mm,
And that was what they thought. And if you think something and you're in charge, then it's true.
mm,
Then I just started writing again, and I wrote. I was writing about Easy and Mouses much later, after a World War II. It's in Los Angeles, and when I got about halfway through, I realized that it was a mystery. I didn't actually know that before. I was just talking about writing experiences, and that's how I ended up writing mysteries. At least some of the
It's so
time.
well. It's interesting what you say, because I've heard Sarah Paretsky talk about writing the first V.I. Warshawski mystery, and part of the impetus for writing the book for her was that she wanted to break into the forum and claim it as a feminist forum, and sort of
Mhm.
kind of get her revenge on Sam Spade and all these straight white guys who've been dominating the forum. So you realized Easy's story was a mystery, but the form itself, historically, there's Chester Himes, Rudolph Fisher, but historically, it hadn't been a form that was particularly welcoming to people of color, to really anyone, again, who wasn't a white, straight guy protagonist. So was there any sense of, I'm gonna claim this form for an African American detective? Was a
Uh,
political purpose in your mind?
well, I mean, it is political. I'm kind of hesitant to say, that, to kind of frame myself in that, this political, activist. I wanted us to be part of history. I wanted black people migrating from the deep South to be part of the history of where they were. And I was in Los Angeles then, or at least in my
Mm,
mind. Um, so I wanted to tell that story because I wanted us to be in history, because the only way we can be in history is through fiction. Nobody reads books about history.
mm,
Not very many people do. And so my intention was to write about these people, especially these men, black male heroes. Now, the thing is that that's political, if you
Yeah.
look at it from the outside, well, that's a political move. But I wasn't thinking of it like that. I just said, well, I want these people who I love, who I was raised with, who are so important to be part of the history of the rest of, where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it wasn't a political decision. It was a literary decision. But
Okay.
but there was a subject, and that subject, I mean, really, honestly, it's impossible to write a novel that doesn't, a good novel that doesn't have politics in it one way or the other. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that, I'm writing, particularly that, like, I don't think that Langston Hughes was doing that either, but that's what happened in the end. He writes enough books about people who are having certain kinds of experiences, and it becomes, a political touchstone.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me we're living through another period with detective fiction where the form is opening up again. I don't know. Like when you began in 1990, there were a lot of writers who've since fallen by the wayside. Some of them are still with us, claiming detective fiction for gay and lesbian voices, for African American, Asian, Hispanic. And then it seemed to close down again, and I'm speaking as a critic and as a great lover of the form. It seemed like, and I love Michael Connelly, but it seemed like that kind of familiar figure of the white guy detective came to the fore again. And now we've got, again, like Joe Ide, S.A. Cosby, whose novel Blacktop Wasteland I saw that you blurbed and I just reviewed and I love. Steph Cha. It seems like the form Attica Locke is in the last few years has become re-energized with writers and characters who don't fit the standard profile of what we've come to expect the classic detective to be. I don't know if you have any, if you share that sense with me or not, and if you have any theories about maybe why that is.
It's so hard to say because, Steph and Sean and a lot of people, they've been doing a lot of work for a long time. And there are quite a few people, I think, that have been getting published. You do have the problem in publishing where if somebody doesn't think that people are going to sell like Michael Connelly, then they're not going to really back it. A little bit more than a year and a half ago, another crime genre writer, Kelly Garrett, and I started an organization called Crime Writers of Color. And there's like over 200 members, of all colors, and many of them have been writing for quite a while. Some of them have just started. I think that you need that push to get into it, and you need that excitement among the publishers, which you have. Like right now, actually, people are very interested in books about Black people in America right now. So I'm not sure that it stopped and started again. I agree with you that there was a lull. That those people were still working. They were still thinking. They were still open. They were still, reading my books. Reading Gary Phillips. Reading Attica, and that was very. I think it made people say, well, this can be done. Though it took a while to kind of get there again. I don't understand the dip. But it was a dip in publishing, not in writers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were the writers who were working the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe a dip, I thought maybe a dip in independent or those specialty bookstores. I know in DC where I live, we used to have 2 bookstores that just specialized in mystery and detective fiction, and they closed. So maybe there wasn't that support on the ground for people just starting out.
It's interesting, I mean, because that can go one of two ways. You can be you could be like that kind of mystery publisher who just loves Ed McBain and listen, and I like these people too, but though that kind of writing, not another kind of writing. And some are very open, really want to open things. And the younger people are, the more likely they are to want to see parts of the world that they've been made aware of that maybe the previous generations weren't aware of. Actually, just didn't really know what was going on there. So, well, I know there's some Black people over there. I don't know what they do, but they're over there, and I'm here.
Yeah. I was looking at a book that you published last year, Elements of Fiction, which is kind of I don't want to say it's a writing guide. It's a lot of things. It's kind of memoirish, but it also is reflective in terms of the craft of fiction. And I thought the first sentence of Elements of Fiction was so interesting because you say, this monograph is concerned with the hope of writing a novel that transcends story in such a way as to allow the writer to plumb the depths of meaning while at the same time telling a good yarn. And I thought that's pretty, in one sentence, that pretty much speaks to the power of detective fiction. I mean, you really can plumb the depth and tell a good yarn, which is maybe to go back to why you could tell the story of E.Z. Rawlins as a mystery, but maybe it didn't seem so appealing to the publishing industry before it was presented as a mystery. The mysteries have that crossover appeal.
Well, one of the great things about the genre is that people read mystery and crime fiction because they want to figure out what happened. Like either in their life, on the streets, at work, or the story that you're presenting. And so if you're like detectives, a Chicano or a dwarf, or somebody from your mother's home country, Latvia or something, people will read it and they'll learn all this stuff from it because they're learning everything because they want to figure out the mystery. And so it as a political kind of vehicle, it's really great to reach a lot of people outside of your community.
Yeah. You've got another sentence. You got many sentences in this book that I was underlining, but I like the way you talk about plot as the structure of revelation, which is again kind of something that speaks to the mystery form. Although the plot-heavy identity of the mystery, I think, has worked against it in terms of literary value. Like in the Academy, where I lived part of the time, there's still this prejudice against mystery fiction. I teach a course in mystery fiction, and it's considered the fun course in the department.
Well, as if fun can't give you knowledge. It's just like enjoying something is the best way you're going to get knowledge. It's the best way you're going to learn. No, it's true. I mean, I go crazy. Like I'm kind of in the literary community. And I just it really is. Well, what's important is what John Updike was doing. And, I didn't like Updike's writing. So, but it's kind of exclusive. And I think when you have a genre that's very inclusive, very popular, then it takes a really long time, for people who want to own that real estate to accept it. But if you look at the history of literature, all the way back to Homer, almost all of great fiction, a little different in poetry, but almost in all of great fiction, it was popular fiction. It was the Three Musketeers. It was, it was Charles Dickens. It's Huckleberry Finn. It's Dead Souls by Gogol in Russia. These are things that people want to read because they're laughing. It's really fun. What the guy's saying is really true. The Bronte sisters. I mean, it's like Shakespeare. All of these people were entertainers.
Yeah.
And now somebody comes up to me and says, well, I'm doing this deep dive into this, this person's, personality, and I'm trying to make him look very real and very pedestrian, I'm going, but why am I reading it? And, a lot of times there
Right.
is no reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah. It
always.
should be a call to pleasure as well as a call to all the other things we want out of literature. I want to make sure to talk about the book of yours that's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's called The Awkward Black Man, and a great collection of 17 short stories. One of the things that struck me about this collection is that almost all the protagonists are awkward Black men. They're kind of not at home in their own skin, so to speak. They're shy, or they're socially awkward. I mean, they're very different from Easy Rawlins, from Leonard McGill. Your detective characters in that sense, and yet they're all loners. I mean, they really seem to be most at home, being by themselves, whether that's by choice or by social accident. So I love the title, and I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about the title, The Awkward Black Man.
Well, so many Black male characters who appear in all kinds of fiction and literature and movies and television shows have, they have a great weight on their shoulders, and they're really, to a great degree, not always, caricaturized. You have the best friend, the pimp, the criminal, the guy who says, I'm really smart and I'm going to be a really good detective. Whatever these people are, it's not, it's really hard to go very far from those kind of notions. Those people exist. It's fine. But the thing is that I certainly want to talk to somebody, who is a rap entrepreneur, and he's so good at it that he gets hired for this, this future of migrating souls, because what they really need is a salesman, and he knows how to sell stuff, or you have a guy who they say, well, we'll give you this job, because we need African Americans. They say, well, listen, I'm not an African American. And they said, what are you talking about? So, well, I'm not an African American, man. I said, you're an Italian American, and this guy over here is a Mexican American, and you gonna give me a whole continent, Where am I from? You have those notions that are very apparent and everybody knows about inside the Black community, but it's kind of hard outside, that you have these ways of talking and thinking and that don't include us. There's somebody passed a rule that we're African Americans, and so I actually know of a woman, a young Black woman, who's talking to her boss, who's a white woman, and she said, well, being Black, and the woman puts her hand on her arm and she says, African American. Now here's a Black woman just said she was Black, but this woman is going to correct her and say, no, and so I want to uncorrect that, and I want to talk about all these characters who have lives who we see in other literature and other film and plays and stuff, but we're not seeing as much in the Black community. And I wanted to pinpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. The example you just gave about the woman being corrected and told she should refer to herself as African American, of course, reminds me of the op-ed you wrote for the New York Times last year,
Right.
Why I Quit the Writer's Room. And, that op-ed was sparked by an incident where you used the N-word in the writer's room of a show you were working on, and you were reported to HR for doing so, and rather than, for various reasons, you just quit. I really would love to talk a little bit about that op-ed, which maybe you're tired of talking about, but it just seems, you're an intellectual, you think through these issues. You were speaking out for free speech. You also gave the example of disagreeing with a friend of yours who mentioned that the Confederate flag should be banned. You disagreed with that opinion. And I wonder, as an intellectual, one of the marks of an intellectual is that you think things through, and sometimes you change your mind or you revise your opinion in light of everything that's happening these days with Black Lives Matter. I wonder if you would, I don't know, if you would still feel the same way, for instance, about the Confederate flag and Confederate statues, and kind of if that idea, if the positions you've taken are the same.
Oh yeah, the position I took then is same thing I take now. I mean, and the idea of telling me what kind of language I can use, not because I'm a Black man in America, but because I use language. Sometimes it makes people unhappy. Sometimes they love it. It doesn't matter. Sometimes somebody comes up and hits me in the head. Well, okay, I took that risk, and somebody hit me in the head. My friend said that he was trying to get an organization together to make the Confederate flag illegal. Now, I agree. It shouldn't be like in state flags. It shouldn't be in the government. It should be, we got one flag. It's the United States flag. That's our flag. Okay. We have a state flag. Okay. But I'm not going to say, that a guy, can't have whatever he thinks, is his identity. And believe me, if somebody has a Confederate flag in his heart, I wouldn't mind seeing it on his car, swinging in his front yard. It's okay with me. I think that the idea of the freedom of speech, and I think a lot of time in America today, like people, correcting speech, telling people there are things that you can't say, coming up with rules of language that you can't use, even though that language is in the dictionary. And I'm saying no, this is not a good thing, because it's going to come back at the people who think that they're taking charge of it. That's the problem. We have to protect everyone, because that's what the Constitution says. Being Black in America, having refused the rights of the Constitution for centuries, and I'm going to really be committed to everybody having those rights, because that's the one way to make sure that I and mine have it.
Have you thought about writing a monograph on this subject? I think it would be kind of timely.
I've thought about it some. I haven't quite, worked it through yet. It's like, people got mad at me when I went around. I went around doing, being interviewed, and some people got really mad at me for saying these things. And so, you kind of have to do it in a way, because I don't want to do it to make people unhappy. I don't want to say, that, I believe that, that women should be stalked and brutalized by men, that racism is just okay and we like it, but, we have it in the White House. So, like, not far away from where you are. And I want to be able to, I want to be able to say it in such a way that we're having a sensible conversation and not having, an impact. Headbutt.
Yeah, hard to do. We're almost out of time. So you mentioned there's a new Easy Rawlins on the horizon. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, I'm so happy with it. It's a book called Blood Grove, and it really goes into Easy's military history. That he takes on a case with this young veteran from Vietnam, 1969, and he does it because he identifies as much with veterans and victims of war as he does with Black people. He says, I've been through the war. I was at the Battle of the Bulge. I know what this is. And, you just kind of love it. I mean, the idea of Easy being able to do this, but at the same time, being a Black man in Los Angeles in 1969, which is not, I mean, it's a lot easier than 1939, but still, it's not all that good,
It sounds great. I look forward to it, and just want to thank you for all the writing you do. You may not always agree, but it's always provocative, and I am always carried away by the story, the detective fiction that you write. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the talk. It's been great.